And today we're going to be talking about 5 tips to screen tenants. So this is actually a really exciting topic for me, and one of the things that I was told when I first got into the real estate world is that there's no such thing as a bad tenant, there's just a lazy landlord. And so it's super interesting to when you think about that and what that actually means as a landlord is. So the essence of that statement is that as a landlord, if you do a good job of screening your tenants up front, then you won't have any bad tenants. But as a landlord, if you don't do a good job screening your tenants, you don't take the time to maybe go through these 5 things or whatever else is your checklist, and you just take the first person who shows up, then, that's lazy landlording, and you might end up with a bad tenant. And at the end of the day, this is something I'm a huge believer in. It's always the landlord's fault. Well, not always, but it can be, typically is the landlord's fault when there's a bad tenant. And why is that the case? Well, the landlord's the one that says yes or no. And there's definitely situations where tenants do things that, as a landlord, you don't expect. They surprise you and they ruin your property or they wreck your property. And so, whose fault that is, it can go either way. Sometimes it is 100% the tenant, sometimes it's 100% the landlord. But personally speaking, I like to put that responsibility on our shoulders. We're the ones renting the properties. We're the ones managing the properties. So it's on us to ensure that we do a good job of getting good tenants. Overall, I think we do a really good job, and we've had a good success rate in having great tenants and good relationship with all of our tenants. And these are 5 things that we always do, and hopefully this is going to be something that's helpful for you. So tag somebody in the comments, share this post with somebody who's thinking about renting out a property, who's a beginner landlord or whatnot, and this might save them some headaches. So I'm going to erase this, and we're going to get right into it. All right, so 5 tips. All right, so I'm going to write them out loud here really quickly, and then I'll touch them. The first one is you want your income of your tenants to be 3x of your rent. Number 2, you want to make sure that we do a criminal and a credit check. We do, we also look at the proof of employment. And then the one we do is, we like to look at their car, actually. So, these are 5. These aren't all the ones that we do, but these are definitely 5 we always do. So the first one, if you're going to ask for $1,000 in rent, then you want the household income to be at least $3,000. Whenever it dips below that, I think you get into a situation where you might have a problem with the tenant making rent always, and once you get behind on rent, anytime you get behind on any bills, it's always tough to get caught up again and get current. So, not that it's impossible, it's just challenging, and so you want to set up any possible tenants you're going to have for success. So, income 3 times the rent. So if you're asking $1,000, rent should be $3,000. Or sorry, if rent's $1,000, their income should be $3,000. And I'm going to skip to number 3. Proof of employment. Get pay stubs. Get a letter of recommendation from their employer. Get something so that you're not just taking somebody's word for what it is that their income amount is. So you want to make sure that you've got written proof, add it to your file, and then that way you know what they're making, and then that helps you make a good decision, put your tenant into a good situation of success. We always do criminal and credit checks. And credit is, for a lot of the stuff that we do, credit's not a big deal because, as some of you guys know, you can get bad credit for things like, student loans or medical bills and things like that. So if you get a medical bill of $20,000, as a landlord, you have to have make a good judgment call. So I think we don't think it's a good idea to just draw a line in the sand and say, hey, anybody who has less than X credit, we're not going to rent to, or anybody who has more, we'll always rent to, because sometimes people with really good credit can be very bad tenants, and sometimes people with really bad credit can be amazing tenants. So when you're looking at credit, use a judgment call. It's not it's not black or white, and it is case by case. Criminal. Again, it's case by case. There are certain things that we have that are absolute, we're not going to rent to you. But, if something's 20 years old and somebody has 20 years of history since that criminal offense, make a judgment call. Do you really feel that that's indicative of who that person is today or not? And that is just part of being a good landlord, is using good judgment and having those conversations and really getting a feel for what's what. So that brings us to number 4, previous landlords. Call their previous landlords. Your tenant says, oh yeah, I'm moving here from XYZ, on 123 Main Street in Springfield, Illinois or whatever. Then call that landlord and say, hey, would you rent to them again? Why are they moving? Did you have a good experience? Did they get their full security deposit back? And if previous landlords have had good experience with with your prospective tenant, it's a good bet that that tenant's going to be a good fit for you as well, as long as they meet all the other requirements. So take the time, make that 5-minute, 10-minute phone call, and see what the story is. Personally, I'm always a little concerned when a tenant is unwilling or unable to provide contact information for a previous landlord, because it's not always the case, but typically it means that they burn bridges. And if they burn bridges with other people, you kind of want to not be part of that same story. And then the last thing, this is a little bit of a hack. It's not always the case, but we have found that people who show up in cars that are well maintained, not even new cars per se, but cars that are well maintained, that are semi-clean, organized, etc., it's indicative of how they're going to treat the property. So it's just little things that you're going to find out. If somebody shows up in a car, it doesn't matter how old it is, but if it's in good shape, it's clean, it looks maintained, it's organized on the inside, that's an indication of how they're going to take care of the house. Obviously, it's not foolproof, but it's something we like to be aware of, and we don't do like the whole peer into the windows, but as people show up, just pay attention, walk by the car, look in, etc. And it's a good way to just get a feel for somebody's overall approach to cleanliness and order in their life. So yeah, guys, this is 5 tips on how to screen tenants. Hope you found it helpful. Would love to know if these tips have worked for you or not. So if you like the tips, let us know below in the comments. See you guys next Wednesday.